Hi people, Moin Wevenberg here again as always and as usual. Yeah, this video obviously is going to be called Astrology and Wealth. It's good to see that my previous video did well despite the fact that it's an astrological video, which generally speaking does not do well. There's not as much interest in my astrological videos compared to spirit videos or videos on heavy occult related subjects like rituals and working with specific entities and so on. This is kind of like a request an indirect request by a commenter that commented on the last video asking if I was going to do something along the lines of this subject. And yeah, here you go. I simply thought about it and I thought to myself, yeah, it's also a good subject to cover. Bear in mind that I won't be able to tell you similar to what I commented in relation to the commenter. So my reply to that comment was something along the lines of, I don't know, we'll see. I also don't know if I'll be covering other topics in relation to other subjects that life-related subjects, hinting at astrology or that are conveyed through astrology. By default, everything, like I said, okay, your natal chart, the astrological constellation or the zodiac, the planetary constellation, the planetary constellation under which you're born. It simply displays the building blocks of your naturally given, God-given personality. So the second you're born, just like I said in the previous video, hypothetically speaking, even if you don't believe in God, it does not matter, okay? Higher up, whatever you want to say or call the universe, it is decided. The second you're born, what you're going to be like. You're going to be like this, you're going to be like that, you're going to be able to do this, you're going to be naturally good at that, etc., etc., etc. This is what your life is going to look like. The only exception to that rule is a tremendous change. For example, generally speaking, a heavy change that is esoteric or heavily occult based in nature. But even that is indicated in general. Like I said, even that is indicated in general. So yeah, your faith as a whole, generally speaking, can be is heavily emphasized, okay, and is reliant on the constellation you're born under. Just like I said in the previous video, the same way that you learn to tell time, okay, that we learn to tell time and how the planet moves and whatnot, etc. A clock isn't responsible for day and night and whatnot, okay. We simply created a clock to be able to know what time it is in relation to the planet's movements and to know how long we have before it's going to get dark and so on and so forth, you name it. So yeah, in any case, astrology and wealth. This time I'm simply going to discuss the planetary constellation a person is born under and specifically what you need to be on the lookout for that will hint at finances. Because just like I said, the constellation you're born under also shows whether you'll be wealthy, whether you'll be doing moderately well, whether you'll be dead broke for the rest of your life, if not the majority at the very least, or for at the very least, a specific portion of your life or a good portion of your life, or anything else in between. So yeah, let's get started. First off, the first planet that I'm going to cover is Saturn, of course. Okay, the quote-unquote deadly Saturn. Yeah, Saturn in general is bad news. Like I think I already said that yesterday in Astrology and Mental Illness. Again, before I continue, if everything you might need, etc., all interesting stuff, just check the link in the description below or wait for the end screen so you can feast your eyes on anything you might be able to use if you're interested yourself. Yeah, in any case, Saturn, generally speaking, is bad news. It simply indicates your weak link or the weakest link, what you're going to struggle with in life as a whole. Saturn in the second house, generally speaking, doesn't do so well. It depends. If Saturn is strong, generally speaking, it would be Saturn in Libra, Saturn in Aquarius, in Capricorn, then yeah, you'll be doing well. As long as Saturn is strong, well aspected, it has favorable placements, then yeah, you'll be doing well in life financially. Okay, the placements, so the aspects and the zodiac signs would indicate how. For example, Saturn in Aquarius would stand for you, for example, being in the public eye, you being a political speaker of some kind, you name it. Bottom line is you'll be a public figure either at a domestic level or at an international level. If Saturn, for example, is in Capricorn, then it stands for you being an authority figure, and That's how you make your money, essentially. And of course, the second house, the house that Taurus rules over, deals with wealth in general. It stands for your income. The second house and the eighth house, the house that Scorpio rules over, are the only two houses I'm aware of that deal directly with finances. But the reason I'm not focusing on the eighth house, the house that Scorpio rules over, is because that stands for money, essentially, from third parties. Think of banks, financial institutions, etc. Essentially money that doesn't belong to you, quote unquote other people's money. Okay, money that belongs to other people. So yeah, I'm only going to discuss the second house, because the second house stands for your money, your income, your material possessions and resources and all of that. So yeah, Saturn, if it's strong, then you'll be doing well. If Saturn is weak, Saturn is afflicted, for example, Saturn is going retrograde, or Saturn is in Aries, by default, Saturn does well in air signs in general. Think Aquarius and Libra, and also in earth signs, elemental earth signs. Think of Virgo, think of Capricorn. Since Saturn rules Aquarius and Capricorn, then yeah, that's obvious. More or less. In Taurus and so on, and in Gemini, not so much, but it all depends on the situation. Saturn, generally speaking, does not do well in water signs and in fire signs. So, for example, if Saturn is in Aries, in the house that Taurus rules over, the second house, if it was in that placement when you were born, or for people that were born under Saturn and Aries in the second house, oh no. That means that the person, generally speaking, will be poor. The person will struggle tremendously financially, and the person will work their entire life, commit the back-breaking labor, so to speak, working overtime at some dead-end job with little to show for it, little to nothing to show for it, for at the very least the majority of their life, or a bulk of their life. So yeah, that's it for strong and weak Saturn. Another planet, Mars, that is interesting, because it's not something that I've seen too often. I think over the course of my career as an occultist, out of the hundreds upon hundreds of readings I've cast, specifically referring to natal astrology, so birth charts, I think I only saw, one or two people that were born under Mars in the second house. But in any case, Mars in the second house stands for materialism, plain and simple. Someone that is born under Mars in the second house, the keyword is materialism. The person will be materialistic like there's no tomorrow. For that person, it will be all about the money. It's all about wealth, material possessions, etc. Mars, generally speaking, indicates what you're driven by. Where Mars is located decides what will drive you, as in what do you want, what essentially turns you on in life, so to speak. And yeah, Mars in the second house, well, you can do the math for yourself, so to speak, listener or viewer. Mars in the second house, people that are born under Mars in the second house are people that simply are driven and turned on by money, material possessions, you name it. Now, if Mars is strong, Mars is in Aries, Mars is in Scorpio, etc., then the person will be extra driven, as in the person will really be over the top ambitious, and or will display over the top ambition in their quest to attain wealth. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to become wealthy. Bear in mind, there's a good difference, okay? Mars indicates that they're driven by wealth, they're driven by money, by material possessions, but not that they're going to be wealthy, okay? Think of a hustler, someone that has a hustler's mentality. Whether the person will indeed be well off depends on the rest of the constellation that they are born under. But generally speaking, yeah, a strong Mars helps in that direction. We're talking about extra motivation. Now, a weak Mars, if Mars is, for example, afflicted, Mars is in an air sign, Mars in Libra, for example, or Mars in Taurus, and Mars has negative aspects to other planets, or Mars is going retrograde, then generally speaking, it will stand for the fact that the person has an affinity for materialism, but there are difficulties. The person has difficulty being ambitious towards materialism. The person has difficulty, hypothetically speaking, getting off their ass and actually getting things done to, quote unquote, make that money. Another interesting thing is that Mars, for example, if Mars is heavily afflicted, then it indicates criminal behavior. An example is, for example, Mars in Aries. Okay, now Mars is strong in Aries at its strongest, but imagine Mars in Aries going retrograde and having heavy negative aspects. Think of, for example, an opposition to Saturn, think of a square to Pluto. in that context, that indicates hyperaggression. So again, you can also do the math here, viewer and or listener. Someone that has such a heavily afflicted Mars is so difficult, it will produce criminal behavior. So plain and simple. All you need to keep in mind is, listen, Mars in Aries stands for aggression. In the second house, the house of Taurus, the house that deals with money, income, and Mars is literally going retrograde, for example. It's going in the opposite direction. No, it's bad news. Any negative aspect to Saturn or Pluto indicates forcefulness. It indicates destructive behavior. So yeah, you can imagine. You can connect the dots for yourself. Okay, that will stand for criminal tendencies. The person will, worst case scenario, turn into a notorious felon that does nothing but commits crime in order to attain money. A bank robber is an example. You name it. And in the best case scenario, the person will do things like commit fraud or petty theft. Let's just say things that you can consider misdemeanors, so minor crimes. Although, again, fraud doesn't classify as a minor crime for me, but you know what I mean. Okay, a minor crime where essentially, quote unquote, no one gets hurt. Whereas in the bank robber example, if Mars is super afflicted, then yeah, the person will not give a rat's ass, and a person will kill anyone that stands in the way of them and their quest for money. So yeah, that's it for Mars. Moving on to Venus. I need to specify that I'm not going to treat all the planets, only planets that have, let's just say, an interesting behavior, so to speak, if someone were to be born under any of these planets that I'm mentioning in the second house. Now, Venus in the second house is nice and strong. That's the house that Venus rules over. Venus rules over Taurus and Libra, so the second and the seventh house. So the second house, the house of Taurus, Venus being there is good. It stands for someone that is very fond of materialistic items, someone that loves money. Doesn't refer to greed. It refers to someone that simply loves money, someone that has a fondness for wealth and the finer things in life, so to speak. Not just specifically money, but think of all the things that money can buy. Diamonds, precious metals, and thingy minerals. It just goes on. Beautiful clothing, anything that you can think of that would indicate lavishness, if you will. Yeah, that's what Venus in general means. And again, similar to Mars, that doesn't indicate that the person will be wealthy. It stands for the fact that the person loves money. The person is fond of wealth, but that does not mean that the person will be well off. That all, like I said in Mars as well, is reliant on the other factors relating to the constellation that this person was born under. A strong Venus being in Libra here, for example, or Venus being in Taurus, in the house that Taurus rules over the second house, and having good aspects, will simply refer to the fact that, yeah, generally speaking, the person will be well off. The person won't be wealthy, tremendously wealthy, but the person will definitely not struggle. The person will be above average on the income scale, so to speak. And the person will know how to, essentially spend their money well, to the point where their possessions are beautiful. Think of someone that has a beautifully decorated house, beautiful outdoor furniture, all the things you can think of that indicate lavishness. Not that someone is really well off, but that someone does well financially. Someone that has beautiful possessions, if you will. Now, an afflicted Venus, for example, going retrograde, Venus being in Aries, for example, yeah, it will also indicate aggression, but in a different way compared to Mars. Someone that was, for example, born under Venus in Aries in the second house stands for the fact that the person will be greedy. Greed does apply here. The person will be greedy, the person will hoard money, the person will be ungraceful when it comes to financial matters. And for example, since Venus is stronger in a woman's chart, a woman that's born under Venus in Aries in the second house, and it's afflicted, okay, it doesn't have a lot of good aspects and whatnot, or it was going retrograde as well, no. Someone like that, no. Someone that's born under Venus in Aries going retrograde, for example, someone with such a difficult Venus, a woman with such a difficult Venus, or born under such a difficult Venus, better said, will definitely not be graceful. It'll, generally speaking, be honestly just a bitch, especially a bitch when it comes to money. She'll display bitchy behavior, she'll hoard money, she'll be very greedy, and will be unwilling to spend money. For example, if her and friends go out, she will not shy away or better said, be embarrassed even in the slightest to ask friends to pay for her, because she'll come up with some excuse. She has some expense that she needs to be covered. She's not really doing well financially, blah blah blah. It just goes on. See, that's what I mean in relation to not being graceful when it comes to money. Yeah, and that's essentially it for Venus. Let's see if there's anything else that is of interest. No, not specifically. No. Okay, now moving on to another planet, Uranus. Uranus, for example, Uranus in the second house. Uranus is by default strong in air signs, Aquarius, Libra, and in water signs. Uranus does not do well in earth signs or in fire signs. So if Uranus is in the house of Taurus, someone that's born under Uranus in Taurus, in the house of Taurus, in the second house, money will come to them out of nowhere. If Uranus is strong, then money will literally fall in their lap out of nowhere at just sudden moments. Think of finding money on the street, and I mean that literally. Think of finding money on the street, or simply winning a scratch ticket, anything along those lines. It all depends on how well Uranus is aspected. But imagine that Uranus, for example, is in Libra. Uranus is strong, well aspected. Then yeah, the person will be doing well financially, but not wealthy. The person will simply experience sudden fits of good fortune, financial good fortune, depending on the other aspects, etc. The rest of the constellation will indicate how. Of course, everything I've said up to this point is provided that all of these planets are indeed strong, and that the rest of the constellation doesn't exactly nullify all the goodness that these strong planets convey in the second house. So yeah, that's it for strong Uranus. Now, for a weak Uranus, an afflicted Uranus, for example, Uranus in Aries, and Uranus has negative aspects. In the house of Taurus, it simply stands for the fact that someone born under that constellation will experience regular misfortune, sudden misfortune out of nowhere that will drain their bank account and their wallet, so to speak. An example, for example, is someone that all of a sudden gets involved in a traffic accident and they need to get surgery. Just out of nowhere, they get hit by an oncoming vehicle, or a vehicle that came out of nowhere, in a matter of speaking. They were minding their own business, and all of a sudden, bam, collision, broken collarbone, broken this, broken that, and the hospital bill adds up. Someone whose window all of a sudden shatters out of nowhere. They're sitting at home and all of a sudden their windows shatter. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. Some kind of household appliance, all of a sudden it worked well yesterday, and now all of a sudden it's in need of changing, or if in need of repairs. That's how it will happen essentially in general. Like I said, it depends on several other detailed factors, such as the zodiac sign that Uranus is afflicted in, and the other aspects to other planets, the relationships to the other planets. But this is an example. An afflicted Uranus, a weak Uranus, will have this effect. Instead of good fortune, it's going to be literally misfortune that will take a toll on their financial life. Not to the point where they become poor, but definitely to their agitation, substantial agitation. Let's see. Neptune. Neptune, there's not a lot to say. Neptune in the house of Taurus, someone born under Neptune in the house of Taurus, generally speaking, will use their intuition. As long as Neptune is strong, they'll use their intuition in general to make money, to earn a living. How specifically? It's difficult to come up with examples, but think of a psychologist, think of a hypnotherapist, someone along those lines. Something along those lines, okay? Someone born under Neptune in the second house, a strong Neptune will, generally speaking, for example, Neptune is in Scorpio or in Pisces, you name it. Someone like that will use their intuition, their natural clairvoyant faculties to earn a living. Not up to an extensive level. It depends on the rest of the constellation. But generally speaking, the person will be able to make a buck or two, in a matter of speaking. That's what Neptune means. An afflicted Neptune stands for the opposite, okay? It stands for someone that loses money in spiritual affairs. For example, someone that gets scammed by scamming spellcasters, or someone that simply loses a good deal of money over the course of their life in affairs where they thought that their intuition would help them, but that's not the case. Let's just say someone that loses money due to delusions, okay, due to plain and simple delusions, and yeah, that's it. Okay, a strong Neptune can also convey someone that advances on a spiritual level through others. For example, hiring an occultist like me or a spellcaster to get things done. Okay, so in a constructive way, essentially. Let's see. The last planet that I'm going to treat is going to be Jupiter. The other remaining planets, there's not a lot to say about them. The Sun, Mercury, nothing really, because they don't hint at anything specifically. It's more generic with them. So yeah, Jupiter is the last one that I'm going to treat. Essentially, I saved the best for last. Jupiter, by default, stands for abundance. Jupiter is the planet that deals with abundance. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Sagittarius stands for abundance, and Pisces simply stands for clairvoyance, essentially, the spiritual side of humanity. Jupiter, where Jupiter is located specifically will indicate an abundance in someone's life. And Jupiter in the second house, yeah, oh boy, yeah. Now, if there was any planet that ever indicated wealth, you better believe it's Jupiter. If Jupiter is strong, and Jupiter is, for example, imagine Jupiter being in Sagittarius, one of the zodiac signs it rules over, and Jupiter is in the second house. Someone born under such a placement, such a strong Jupiter is well aspected, you name it, etc., 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 blah, 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 will definitely be well off financially. We're talking about an abundance, okay, an abundance of money, an abundance of an income, just plain wealth, okay. The person will make 3 to 4 times the national average of what, or at least 2 times the national average in their respective location, so their country of residence, or even just by global standards. It's going to be clear that the person is well off financially. Now, on the flip side, on the opposite end of the spectrum, imagine Jupiter going retrograde, Jupiter being afflicted and having negative aspects. It will stand for the opposite. It will stand for someone that is really, really struggling, okay? Someone that is really struggling, someone that will not do well in life at all financially, someone that will be borderline homeless, someone that will be making, dare I say, below minimum wage even. I mean, someone that's really going to circle the drain, the poverty drain. Yeah, and that's essentially it. Last but not least, I'm going to leave people with 2 examples, okay? The first one is of an acquaintance, his chart. This is a man's chart. Of course, I removed all his information, such as his name and background and all of that stuff. So this is just a plain chart. But in any case, this is an actual chart of a constellation that a person was born under. And as you can see for yourself, the person, when you see the image, the person himself is not doing well financially. Jupiter is horribly afflicted. And yeah, as a result, the person is struggling like there's no tomorrow. And last but not least, closing off this video with my own chart. Of course, I'm not boasting for myself. Absolutely not. Okay, I'm not wealthy by any means, but I would. But I'm simply saying that to be modest, in all honesty. Not that I'm the shy type, but my own chart. Yeah, Jupiter is well aspected, as you can tell. Despite the fact that it's not in the second house, the house that Taurus rules over, Jupiter is well aspected to the second house, and that is the reason that, even if I say so myself, I am doing well financially. Yeah, and other details you can simply read about it in the constellation itself, in the text that is in the left corner, the bottom left corner. So that is all, guys. It's been a pleasure as always, and see you later. Bye.